Welcome to another Super Deluxe Edition unboxing video. Today we're going to take a look at the Rolling Stones in Mono, the new coloured vinyl box set. So this is a 16 LP vinyl box set. It's a reprint of the 2016 black vinyl edition. Everything looks the same. You can see there's a sticker saying the Rolling Stones in colour. So it's the Rolling Stones in mono and the Rolling Stones in colour as well. Now this looks identical to the other one. So I just so happen to have the black version of this box set. So it came with a magnetic flap at the front and then Rolling Stones in mono. You open up this flap and then you get all the records, and then there's a sort of glossy 48-page booklet at the front here. So I'm expecting everything to be identical. So we can open it up and have a look. One thing to note is that these were numbered before. See, I've got 136 out of 10,000. The new sets are also numbered, so we'll see that in a second. So this still has its shrink wrap on, which I will remove now. But you can see these are numbered as well, up to 10,000. I mean, it's surprising they're doing 10,000, but we'll take that at face value. Another 10,000, this is number 5,000. 569 hand numbered on this one. And the backing sheet there tells you what's going on. 16 coloured vinyl records, 150 plus tracks, all 180 gram vinyl, 48-page book. There's all the albums. So we'll open this up and take a look. So the backing sheet here is stuck on with that little, what I always call bogey glue, so that will come off. I'm not going to bother to take it off, but what it will reveal is just a plain white background. Now it's quite an unusual design, this box set. You know, it's good on the spine, it tells you what's going on, but this kind of roll over magnetic flap is quite unusual. You don't really see too many of them. Nice spot varnishing there going on with the Rolling Stones, as you can see where it catches the light. But yeah, it kind of folds over and then you've got the content inside. The only issue I have with this is sometimes you go to pick up the box set and this kind of shifts up, and I mean, it's not too bad, it's reasonably secure on the magnet, but you do have to be a little bit careful. But they're the two spines. As I say, underneath you've got the numbering. I mean, they haven't updated the date on the back of here, so it still says 2016. So I think everything is absolutely identical, except for the colour of the vinyl records. So this booklet is same glossy, perfect bound booklet. And I think in here, there's some writing by David Frick from Rolling Stone. I mean, the original box sold out, so it's been out of print for ages. You have to pay like 600-700 quid for it minimum. So that's why this has been reprinted. So it's good to see the record label actually making it available again, because of course there's loads of great box sets that just never get reprinted. So at least they are responding to demand. And they've made it a bit different because it's a coloured vinyl box set. If you've got the black vinyl one, it still feels like you've got something exclusive. So I think that's a reasonable approach, what they've done. But this book is obviously it's their whole career more or less in the 60s, so it has to cover a lot of ground. It's not like a Beatles book with an in-depth look at one album, but it's a nice overview, some great images in there, and 48 pages. It's kind of not massive, but it's also not too thin either. Let's go through and have a look at these records then. So what we're going to find is a bit like with the Beatles. For quite a long period there was different albums for different markets, namely the US and the UK. So slightly different release dates, different track listings, sometimes different covers, different titles. I mean, the Americans did like to spread things out more thinly, so they'd release more albums with less tracks on them. Let's dig in and take a look. So all of these are sealed. This is the first album, the Rolling Stones. This is early 64 in the UK. I think it was April 64 this came out. Cover reproduction is, you know, it's not brilliant. They obviously haven't had access to sort of original negatives or whatever, but they've done the best with this that they can, I think. This is a kind of glossy sleeve. And then this is a blue vinyl pressing. So There we go, that's Decca. So in the UK it was always Decca. In the US, the Rolling Stones were on London Records. Fairly, not polylined in the sleeves, fairly thick card. So this is their first album, so you got a lot of covers on here, Route 66. I mean, there's only one Jagger Richards composition, which is Tell Me You're Coming Back. So that's the Rolling Stones. This wasn't released with this track listing and with this title in America. It was, America had their first release a few months later. I think it was May the American one came out, so it was actually the following month. But the American version of the first album isn't included in this box. So this is the second album for the Rolling Stones in America, called 12 by 5. So there was an EP in the UK called 5 by 5, but in America they bolstered it with some extra tracks and they called it 12 by 5. So this came out in October 64. You can see it includes Time on My Side, it's all over now. Again, cover artwork is not fantastic, it's kind of adequate. Must be down to original source availability. But yeah, this is a London record, so that obviously indicates it's from America, so we've got a kind of orange vinyl pressing. And these are all original mono mixes, very much like the Beatles. Mono was the main format that you'd mix into, and then stereo tended to be done as a bit of an afterthought. So this is the second album in the UK, so this is the Rolling Stones number 2. You can see it uses the same cover as 12 by 5 did. So this came out in early 65, January 65. And this is a blue vinyl pressing. Now the Rolling Stones so this is the US version of the Rolling Stones number 2. And this came out in February 1965. Actually, normally I prefer the UK covers, but I actually prefer the American version. That's a much nicer cover, and the typography I think is very nice. It's actually a really nice reproduction of this cover, so the cover's already starting to look a little bit better. And this has a kind of gold vinyl pressing which ties in with that typography. Now the Beatles obviously had a bit of a head start on the Rolling Stones by a year or so, but even so, this was early 65. The Beatles had already released 4 albums by that point, 4 studio albums, with Please Please Me with the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night and Beatles for Sale. You always think of them side by side releasing stuff together, but it was already the mid-60s and the Rolling Stones were only 2 albums into their career in terms of what was going on in the UK anyway. So still with 1965, 2 versions of Out of Our Heads, the American version from July 65 and then the UK version from September 65. The UK version, I think, probably agree, it's a bit of a cooler looking front cover. So this is another coloured vinyl, blue coloured vinyl, quite a light blue. Not really sure that ties in particularly with anything to do with this artwork, but anyway. And then the UK version of Out of Our Heads. This ties in a bit better actually, because you can see that green colour there, so that's quite nice, I'm liking that. So this album includes Heart of Stone, includes I'm Free, some early classics, Gotta Get Away. Of course, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones were releasing great singles and they weren't always on the albums. But as we'll see at the end, there's a singles collection that kind of wraps everything up. So December's Children, this was a US only release at the end of 65. And this was a way of bringing tracks together that hadn't been on other US albums up to that point. Now obviously they've used the artwork there from the UK version of Out of Our Heads, although there's no colorization, so I don't think it looks quite as good. But the back cover's the same as well. No inner sleeves yet, this is just plain white. And that's a kind of grey vinyl you can see there. Now Aftermath from 66. This includes Mother's Little Helper, Lady Jane, Under My Thumb. Some great tracks on here, Out of Time. So this is the UK version on Decca. So we've got purple vinyl there, which is picking up the purple from the cover. I do think they could have included polyline, given that there's no printed inners to recreate from the original era. For a box this price, you might have expected polyline sleeves to protect the vinyl. And this is the US version of Aftermath. Now, Another good example of cover design which isn't half as good. So Paint It Black isn't on the UK version, but it is on the American version, and they make a point of telling you. So this was released in July 1966 in America, so this is kind of Revolver era. And that's a grey vinyl pressing. So next up is Between the Buttons. This was released in January 1967. The artwork is the same on the US and the UK versions, but the track listings do differ a little bit. I should say these mono albums have been mastered by Bob Ludwig, and the vinyl has been cut by Sean McGee at Abbey Road. He did all the, he did a lot of Beatles work. This is another blue vinyl pressing. Again, I suppose it ties in a little bit with Charlie Watts' tie, doesn't it? But other than that, it's quite bright blue, isn't it? So Flowers, this was a US only compilation. Came out in the Summer of Love, June 1967. So this is basically Sgt. Pepper era. So a lot of this stuff, just a collection of great singles like Ruby Tuesday, Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby Standing in the Shadows, Let's Spend the Night Together, Lady Jane, Out of Time. I mean, it's a great little best of actually, but it wasn't released in the UK. Nice cover art, I really like the front cover. Again, no printed inner or anything like that. Quite a sort of bright pinky colour. I guess it does tie in with the flowers, doesn't it? Pretty bright though. These are all 180 gram vinyl pressings. There hasn't been any translucent vinyl, which I always think looks a bit classier than the thick coloured vinyl. So this is, you know, supposedly the Rolling Stones' response to Sgt. Pepper. It came out in December 67 and actually kicks off a run of 3 years in a row where they released their new album in December. So you don't get the flashy packaging. When they did the 50th anniversary of this, they recreated the really flashy version with the lenticular sleeve. But yeah, this isn't the ultimate version in terms of the packaging. But it is a gatefold, first gatefold. But it's still got the plain white sleeve, which is slightly dull, although this is white vinyl. Right, so we're getting towards the end now with some real classics. So this is Beggars Banquet. And this was released in December 68. This is the original UK cover. Another gatefold, very good gatefold image there. And quite a nice coloured vinyl actually. I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be picking up, probably the text from the Rolling Stones. It looks a bit classy with the sort of dark mauve rather than the sort of brighter blues. And then finally, Let It Bleed. This is from 1969. It's got the Delia Smith cake on the front cover, famously. And this is the very last record or studio album in the box, and we finally get a printed inner, which recreates something from the era, which is a bit of a relief. It's thinner paper, shiny paper. That thick card from before, it's not very tactile. And there's a sort of bright cherry red, I suppose. Looks quite nice. So that's the end of the studio albums. There's one record left, which is a specially compiled double album set called Stray Cats. And it's done in the style of Beggars Banquet, the other version of Beggars Banquet. With all these tracks, it basically brings together everything that's missing from the albums in terms of singles, etc. Very much like the sort of Beatles mono masters, I guess. So you got some pretty good songs on here. You can't always get what you want. Honky Tonk Women, Street Fighting Man, Jumping Jack Flash, 19th Nervous Breakdown, Not Fade Away, I Want to Be Your Man, which was obviously the Lennon-McCartney number that got given to them. Very nice gatefold, thick sleeve, glossy, white vinyl. I don't know if the other one's white as well or whether it's a different colour. We'll soon find out. No, that's white as well. So there we have it. There's the empty box. And then the lid goes on. So this is an amazing collection of music. It's a very hefty box set. Very interesting packaging with the magnetic clasp, of course. It's great news for collectors, people that missed out in 2016, that this is now available again. It's certainly not cheap at around the £330 mark, I think, in the UK, but it's a lot cheaper than trying to get hold of the original black vinyl version via secondary markets. Now, of course, There's a bit of a debate, you know, what would you rather have, black vinyl or coloured vinyl? I must admit, my personal opinion, having gone through this set, is that I prefer the consistency and the pure sort of audiophile appeal of the black vinyl version. I think the colours in this set are slightly all over the place. There's some really nice ones, and then there's some more bright, garish kind of ones that don't necessarily suit some of the cover artwork. But that's just a personal opinion. Coloured vinyl does tend to sell much better than black vinyl, I know that. So there'll be a lot of people delighted to be able to pick this up as a 16 LP coloured vinyl pressing. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Rolling Stones in mono, in colour. If you have, why not subscribe to the Super Deluxe Edition YouTube channel for more great physical music unboxed. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.